We love on News at Prime. Thanks for staying with us tonight. Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa has been answering questions before the National Assembly. This was his first oral reply session since the new parliamentary term began. Some opposition parties called for government to tighten measures to prevent a third wave of coronavirus infections. Well, let's get reaction then from the members of the opposition. We're joined by DA Chief Whip Natasha Mazzone and the EFF National Chairperson Veronica Mente. Good evening to both of you, and thank you so much for your time. Firstly, I suppose we had COVID-19 really dominate the discussion in terms of the questions and the follow-ups that were posed. Do you believe that we have greater clarity around government's vaccine rollout plan and the extent to which it is feasible? Natasha?
Look, I think that today we heard a lot of fluff. The President has told us more than once that we have this amazing plan afoot, but nothing is ever given to us in writing. We've asked numerous times for the plan to be put on the table. We've asked for a roundtable discussion with all political parties to be brought into the arena to understand how the rollout is going to work. When one looks at what's happening in a country like India, one can see the kind of catastrophic events that can occur if this isn't planned very carefully. Given the fact that we're going into winter and we have a high chance of hitting our third wave, I think the fact that our vaccine rollout is so slow, and I think even more than that, that we are lagging behind so far, even on the African continent, is nothing to be proud of, and it's something we should all be extremely concerned about. And I don't think that the President was there today to give answers. I think he was there to give fluff and to paint over the real issues.
Ms. Mente?
Thank you very much. Today's session came as not a surprise. We are all used and know by now that there's nothing that's ever transparent with the current government. And today was no surprise at all. There was no direct answer that was provided, especially if you look at the questions. If I would mention the question of the EFF was a very direct and explicit question that one should unpack it clearly and just thoroughly as to how far is the plan, what is actually the plan, the ABC of the plan, how much does it come with it, where will the money come from, and how is it going to be managed. But none of those answers came forth, and in fact, there was nothing that could even suggest that the country is ready and that the country is ever going to vaccinate any of its own people, in particular those that are vulnerable, and for us to at least gain a herd of immunity. But yeah, that's what it is. We were not surprised at all.
What about the President's argument that he makes that much of whether or not the vaccines are administered on time depends on when they arrive, and that as government there are things that are simply out of their control and therefore cannot give specific details like when vaccines will arrive? Natasha?
Well, I'm not buying that. I think that government, they have to pay money over from Treasury, and Treasury should have budgeted this kind of money. We're going into a whole series of budget debates now. How is it possible that countries around the world know exactly when their vaccines are arriving, know exactly how they're going to be rolling them out? I mean, it's actually quite easy. If one looks at international best practice, you see how schools have been turned into vaccine rollout areas. You see clinics that are and chemists that are vaccine areas. And if one looks at how many chemists and pharmacies we have around our country, these could be vaccine areas. One looks at how the rest of the world has broken down population according to blocks of where people live. So it's not like our government has to reinvent the wheel. We already can follow best practice. And I'm simply not buying the fact that our government does not know when the vaccines will arrive. You sign contracts with companies companies, you pay the money over, and then their vaccines arrive. So once again, I think we have complete incompetence. And in fact, the president at one point even alluded to the fact that there had been ineptness from his own government that was to blame for the lack of vaccine rollout in our country. And I think that we should hold this government strongly to account, because now it's not just a case of money being stolen through corruption. It's corruption that's cost the lives of many South Africans that should not have lost their lives, and will continue to cost South Africans lives, because we are not getting the most vulnerable of our societies vaccinated in time.
Ms. Mente, how worried are you about issues of funding? We've sort of been here before, in particular when government was trying to secure its spot where the COVAX vaccines were concerned, and we had some difficulty in terms of availability of money. Since then, we've been given assurances that whatever bill government needs to foot, it will be done or it will be met. But after today's answer, are you confident that that will in fact happen?
You know, South Africa has no issues when it comes to the funding element of this whole vaccine rollout situation, because you would remember that ever since the country was shut down, many projects of government were stopped. And even ourselves from the parliament side, we agreed and we passed a budget that was mainly based on the reasons of what should be done in terms of funding the COVID project. And for government to be not knowing and give us vivid answers in terms of where the money will come from or if the money is available, it shouldn't be. We passed the budget to cover anything to do with COVID, starting from how are we going to be ensuring that the people have got food on their table, and all the way to the vaccine. So for them today not to be giving us a direct answer and actually promises, not commitments, is actually not acceptable.
Of course, COVID-19 is but one pandemic that the country has been grappling with. We heard a lot about the gender-based violence, the pandemic that is engulfing South Africa in terms of GBV. Not much talk about it today, and yet we know that there are serious problems where that is concerned, including some of the backlogs in testing for DNA.
Absolutely. A question was asked directly about a young lady that Mr. Steenhuisen met in KZN, and the president has now asked the minister to give special attention to this case. And well, I'm very glad that special attention will be given to this case. What about the thousands and thousands of women around our country who continue to suffer the inhumane treatment that they have at police stations? Police stations simply don't have the correct testing gear. Policemen aren't trained as to how to deal with domestic violence issues. We're not getting to the core of domestic violence issues. And I mean, in the COVID lockdown, we saw a massive increase in GBV cases that the government simply didn't address. And it's something that we keep having workshops and workshops and workshops about. But the thing is, groups of women discussing a GBV isn't going to help us. We need men to be involved in these discussions too, because these men have to stop fellow men from abusing their women, and also this patriarchal society that we live in, where we think that as South African women that we are in some way inferior to men, simply has to be dealt with, and it has to be dealt with on a as a sociology not experiment but project that we embark upon as a country, because something is extremely wrong in South Africa. And certainly to deal with one case and to promise to deal with one case that you've been informed of as a president is all well and good, but there are hundreds of thousands of cases across the country that need to be dealt with.
But Ms. Mente, do you believe that enough work has been done on the part of Parliament to actually hold government accountable for its implementation of the various strategies that have been spoken about when it comes to fighting gender-based violence?
Parliament has done all that it can do. But the problem is, if you remember last week, yes, it was last week when Mama Thandi, the Speaker of Parliament, appeared before Zondo Commission and said that Parliament of South Africa owes the country an apology. She shouldn't have said that. Our problem in the South African Parliament is the governing party, which holds majority. So they utilize their majoritarian rule in order to suppress the key performance areas of this that Parliament passes. And ourselves as opposition, we fight, we tell them the truth, we try to guide them, we try to advise, we do everything within our power to make sure that they see where this country should go to, how to deliver services to the people. We are the ones that drove the real-time audits when it came to the PPE, when we could see that even the food parcels, your vouchers, food vouchers were not reaching the people. And when that happened by the Auditor General, it actually exposed that whatever it is that the ANC government have started embarking on in terms of the COVID-19 was not what Parliament had passed. So we are doing our best. We are trying to hold them accountable, but unfortunately, when it comes to decision making and implementation thereof, it is in the majority, which is the ANC people, and they are not doing what we pass as Parliament. That is why in many cases we have to take them to court in order to ensure that they implement the correct decisions and they do right by the people. If you would also remember, come again?
You can go for it.
If you would also remember, on many occasions in the previous Parliament, on many things like the Nkandla, taking the issue of Nkandla to court by the EFF, when the budget was misappropriated by the ANC, on many occasions on decisions that the Parliament was taking when we took the Speaker to court in order for Parliament to implement the correct resolutions of Parliament. We had to take them to court. It looks like even now, as much as we say we're doing enough, we have to take some of the resolutions back to court, because you cannot explain why today the ballistics department is still not working. Women get shot at, but the bullets found on their bodies cannot be matched to the firearms that the perpetrators are having in their possessions, simply because ballistics is having a backlog. The laboratories in terms of DNA is having a backlog. And you want to say this country is fighting GBV. It's not fighting GBV. There are no shelters for women. Women are told by the police, go back to your family, find someone in your family that you can seek shelter at. And that's not good. So we have a government that when we sit in Parliament and draft policies and pass those policies with them, but they go and implement their own thing, it's either they misappropriate the funds or they do not implement anything at all.
All right. Very briefly from both of you, Natasha, what would the president need to do in order to instill confidence in you, in your party, that the COVID-19 response plan of the South African government will get off and that, in fact, some of these targets will be met?
I think the only thing that he could do to instill any kind of sanity and any kind of reassurance with the Democratic Alliance is to certainly call all leaders of opposition parties into a meeting, lay bare on the table the COVID rollout plan, the vaccine plan, show us in black and white where the vaccines have been purchased, how many, and what date the vaccines are arriving from the various countries, show us the rollout plans of each province, and give us a full briefing to each of the political parties. I think that is the only way forward. We need absolute transparency. There must be no place to hide, no more secrets. We need to see those plans in black and white laid before us.
Ms. Mente?
No, it's actually simple. If they refuse, like the meanders the president have been giving us today, if they refuse, we're going to have to take them to court in order to enforce them to give us the plan, because the money is not an issue right now. Funding is not an issue. The issue is that the government does not have a plan. And if it does have a plan, the president is duty bound to tell us what is going to happen. But unfortunately, he's very compromised because he has to now it's payback time for him to the people who have assisted him to be the president of the ANC, and it's now affecting all of us. But we are not part and parcel of that game. We want to work with the president if he is willing to work with the country. If he cannot manage this country and preside over it the best way he knows and the best way the people want, then he must himself declare that he cannot do it. We are willing and able to assist. However, if ever the ANC is hell-bent on not showing us what is the plan, how much is it going to cost, and where are they going to get vaccination from? We have been asking them, why are they not getting the vaccine, the Sputnik from Russia? Why are they not taking the vaccine from China? Because we've seen the results of those vaccinations and the effectiveness thereof of that particular vaccination. Why do they insist on getting vaccines that are not so effective for the variants that have been found in South Africa? So if then that becomes a case of us not knowing what's happening, we are going to have to force the president and the country and the parliament through the courts to vaccinate the people. We are going to demand the vaccination of the people, even if we have to protest during this pandemic and during the time where people have to sit at home. We'll have to protest to every door that we can open. We will have to open it.
Dear MP Natasha Mazzone, EFF National Chairperson, Veronica Mente, let's leave it there for tonight.